Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so
Bring us back after the break.
Yep, Roger. Okay, so now we've got local alcohol policy and the suspension of standing orders. I'm happy to move it and Pauline's happy to second it. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Aye, against, thanks, that's carried. So staff are coming to tell us everything we need to know. Morning.
Kia ora. Good morning. The report you are considering today seeks a decision to approve a proposed draft local alcohol policy for public consultation. We briefed you last week on the community response to the recent engagement on the possible LAP options and the draft policy that has been informed by that engagement. The report before you attaches a draft consultation document, which includes a copy of the draft policy, additional contextual information and maps for consideration. The engagement report summarising the results of the recent engagement has also been released to you and publicly. The proposed draft LAP consists of 3 policies. 1, reducing the maximum trading hours for off licences across the district to 9 p.m. This policy aims to restrict access to alcohol at night time where it can be taken away and consumed in an unsupervised environment. 2, placing a freeze on new off licences in high deprivation areas. This aims to address the disproportionate level of alcohol-related harm experienced by higher deprivation communities by preventing the further concentration and proliferation of licensed premises in these areas. And 3, restricting bottle stores, taverns and nightclubs from being located near sensitive sites, those being addiction and rehabilitation facilities, primary and secondary schools. This policy aims to respond to the community preferences that some licensed premises are not located close to sites where certain parts of the population may be vulnerable. This policy switches the onus from the community to having to object to a licence application to the licence applicant having to show that they can address the community's concerns. At the briefing session last week, councillors asked about potential amendments to the policy. These have been submitted to staff prior to this meeting and will be considered today. Councillors are reminded that while any amendments can be considered, if the amendments are significant enough to require staff to undertake further analysis or consultation in order to provide the council with informed advice, this will delay the LAP until the next council term. If the proposed amendments are within the general scope of the policy being proposed or within the policy options that staff have already engaged with the community on, these amendments are more likely to be able to be made and progress on an LAP can continue this term. When considering any amendments to the policy, staff strongly encourage you to agree on one policy for consultation without alternative options. This will make it simpler for the public to understand the policy proposals, make the council's position clearer on what it is that's being consulted on, and will assist staff's ability to provide clear advice following the consultation. The potential amendments that are agreed will become part of the draft LAP for consultation. If the council is not satisfied with the draft policy for consultation, you can consider pausing the LAP process, which would mean future decisions on the LAP would be made during the next council term. If the council chooses to progress the draft LAP to consultation, then this will begin tomorrow. After the required 4-week consultation period, council will have hearings in June and a final decision on the LAP would take place in late July. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, Jake had one.
Thank you. Just with regards to the amendments, so particularly Melanie's, I'm keen to understand. I agree that it would be simpler to go out with one policy, and I'm willing to be pragmatic on what that is, but wanting to understand what our optionality is when we come to decision making. So say, for example, if Andres passes, removing taverns and nightclubs, would we be able to add that back in if there was an overwhelming strong public preference to do so?
Do you mean add it back in at a later time, or
at that final decision point? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, I mean, just to remind, so this is out for consultation, so we can make any change. Like, we'll go out on the policy, it'll consult. There's still room for change depending on what those,
It's that quantum of change that can often slip you up when you're signing off on a draft and then you get to a final. But what you're telling me now is that the idea that we would remove taverns and nightclubs from that requirement of sensitive sites, if we were to go out with, if that amendment were to pass and it was to go out and draft, if that needed to be added back in, it could be. I'm not saying it would, but I'm saying it could be.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that is amendments, which we'll get to in the next little bit. Because what I want to do is I want to, for a start, and Sarah will get to you in a minute, options 1, 2 or 3, I'm more than happy to move option 1 and Pauline's happy to second it. So, okay, so now we'll go across the page to the amendments, which you've asked a question on, which is good, and we've all got a copy of the amendments in our hands. So staff will provide any additional information if you like. So what we need to do is with the amendments, one of them's got a seconder, the others haven't. So as we go through it, we'll do it. Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean Jake's question, and I'm gonna follow up on it as a kind of a processy one rather than about the detail of the amendments themselves. So in the past, we've had some consultations where we've been told at the end of the day that if we wanted to add something specific back in, we would need to reconsult because it was quite a big change from what we consulted on. To mitigate against that, do we make sure that the consultation document itself includes the fact that we had considered specific things like including taverns and bars, but that's not in the, because that way it encourages people to submit on that particular thing, if that makes sense. Like I am, like Jake, a little bit concerned about the extent of changes we could make without having to reconsult, if you like.
Yes, so that type of change I think would be okay. We are already have already consulted with the community on that, and we know what the community thinks on issues around the sensitive sites. And in terms of being able to make that change, I don't think we would have to reconsult on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of
it's
change?
within
Yeah.
what we already sort of know and understand and have analysed. It's more about the things that we haven't really given enough thought to, or might have consequences that we haven't yet considered. But for that example, we have analysed that option.
Yeah. So if someone came up with something completely new in consultation and said, "Oh, but I think you should do this something different," we wouldn't be able to do that because it wouldn't have been canvassed earlier.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I
Thanks.
just follow up and just clarify Sarah's question, because it was twofold. It also said, should we in the consultation document, as well as saying what we're proposing, what we considered and decided not to propose for these reasons, and that opens...
I think that's a really good way to do a consultation document, because otherwise, people are going, "Oh, but why didn't you think of this?" So making sure that people are clear about the process and the thorough process that we've gone through. And I think that making sure we highlight the things that we have considered but aren't in our draft,
Started the proposal.
so that people are aware of that. I think it's just really important.
It means that the amendments can be easily supported as well.
Yeah, because it means that everything's there. Yeah.
Do you see a problem with that as the officers? I think it's a good idea.
Probably not in terms of the consultation, undertaking consultation itself. It might just take us some time to rework the document to add in the content that's needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth doing to make sure that the process itself overall runs more smoothly, to have that information in there.
Okay. So hang on one sec. Right. As you know, we have 5 amendments in front of us, A1 to A5. So we just need to go down and find out if there's a seconder for all of these, which is cool. And then if there are any further amendments. If there are further amendments, we'll have to have a break while staff digest the amendments, and then we'll come back and have debate on the amendments, whatever they are. So for a start, I'll just... Yeah, sorry, Tyler. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I was just going to jump in on question time before I even think about removing my amendment or not. I don't want to hold up. Sorry, I don't want to hold up the process, but I may have some...
No, Roll, I'll go down the
further
amendments
questions.
now, and you, at that point you can say, right, I'm maybe take it out or whatever.
Yeah. Once asked staff
Yeah,
questions.
so we'll do the first one first. We've got Melanie's one there, which is A1. The seconder is...
Following what Sarah's heard, all I'm wanting is when we consult for people to have options to choose from, not just this is the blanket, this is the policy that we've drafted up, but to not, So if I could change this resolution to something around the consultation document, like what Sarah's just discussed, including the process and
I
the
think we
options
have
that
to
we've
have a
considered.
proposal we go out with. We can't have just you pick what you want. We have to propose something and then say there are other options, but we are proposing this. So it needs an actual proposal about what we are proposing.
Yes, but if the consultation document has included or about the process we've been through, the options that we've rolled out during
so
this
that's what
part.
we were discussing before, but we need
Yes,
a
but
proposal.
I would like it as a resolution.
So basically change that resolution to that.
Yeah.
Great, so I misunderstood what you're saying.
So, okay, so Mel, are you going to modify it a bit or something? So we might have to, when we do have that break, if we haven't got any new amendments, we can play with that then and come back to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just review it.
Righto. So Tyrone was the seconder. We've got Andre and Sam for the next one. All right, because we'll vote on them in a minute. Tyrone and Melanie. Oh, there's for that one. Okay, so that's just roughly that option C, and we have a 50 metre.
So if I'm gonna put it up, I'd say apply a 50 metre. So the staff have provided some helpful advice, and where it says apply a 50 metre rule for Banks Peninsula, this that's what I'll go with. Yeah.
Is that alternative?
Yes, exactly. For that alternative, like the first alternative. 3A, I think, is it? Yeah. 3A, Sam.
Okay, so they should do what he's doing now.
Yeah, you should ask questions about it, if we've got questions.
Okay, all right.
Although I think,
So I'm going a bit quick.
we'll ask questions and hopefully.
Yeah,
it'll
no, I'm going. No. We'll do it. We'll go back. We'll go to back to A2. Andre's and Sam's one. Has anyone got any questions of anybody on that one? Is it fairly clear? Do you want to just say what you're anticipating here, Andre? What would you like to see? Just explain it for people out there that so they.
This amendment says it does include 3.
Yeah, because we'll go to debate soon.
I mean, the general thrust of it is, option C, with bottle stores only, taking taverns and nightclubs out of it. Because otherwise if we start getting into different zones that we include or exclude, we're going to be there essentially all day and potentially have unintended consequences of areas where we've missed and then have to fix up later. Some of the areas that this would impact is areas in the central city, areas like Littleton where there's parts still to be developed. It would also put a sinking lid policy on taverns, for example, around, for example, Church Corner, these types of places. So that's the rationale.
So it's in
I've got more for debate, but best not to do the.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's just to explain what you're putting up.
Yeah,
and it's
that's
just
the
to
thrust of it.
overcome maybe an unintended consequence if we did what we were.
Yeah, and it also potentially would make us look silly if you're allowed to sell alcohol if you label something as a restaurant, so you can sell alcohol during the day near school, but a nighttime operation would not be allowed. Whereas they don't operate during school time anyway.
Okay.
So that's potentially one of the other
Staff,
unintended
yeah, I'll get you in a minute. Mel. Staff want to comment on any problems that you see with that, or is it good?
There's probably nothing to add that's not in the advice that councillors have.
Okay, no worries. Mel, you got a question on it?
Couple. What's the definition of a pub or a tavern? And are they open only at night, or can they be open during school hours?
A tavern is defined in the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act. Essentially, we would probably refer to them as pubs or bars as we know them, and it's about the type of the type of operation it is. So not around hours or anything like that.
No, but they could be open during school hours, couldn't they?
Yes.
And when this was, I was at one of the presentations at a community board, but when this went to the community who gave feedback during this pre-engagement phase, how was it presented? And how come these ones came back and not other ones? Because there's a lot of support through that community phase, engagement phase for this. So, yeah, I wanted to. What did they say around it?
We asked, this one had a few dimensions to it. So we asked whether they supported the policy generally, like the idea of restricting licenses around sensitive sites, so like a general question. We then also gave a list of the types of sites that they think that it should apply to. So that's where we got the list of schools or rehabilitation facilities. We asked other ones as well that didn't get a higher response as well, so things like churches or marae, things like that as well. So we had a list that people could choose from. We also asked about what types of venues then they would want to see against those sites. So that's your bottle stores, your taverns, nightclubs. That's where that came from. And we also asked about the distance and what the distance would be, giving a range between 50 and 200 metres. So we did get data back that essentially, if someone said, I don't want I think a primary school is a site that I think is a sensitive site, and they also ticked that, they don't want a bottle store there. We could see against, sort of play those things against each other and see how close they would want a bottle store near to a school, that type of thing as well. Yeah.
Or was there anything verbalised around why people say don't want a pub 200 metres from a school, within 200 metres of a school?
Yes, there was an opportunity for people to tell us why. That'll be in the engagement report. I wouldn't be able to sort of, off the cuff, be able to answer those.
Andre?
It was just answering the question. So the survey didn't necessarily ask if people support a sinking lid type policy on the taverns and nightclubs. So existing premises that they may well visit themselves if it were to shut down, and then the liquor license doesn't get transferred over, it gets bought, a new business starts later, they are no longer allowed to operate it as they're not able to obtain a license. So just to be clear, the survey didn't ask if people support a sinking lid policy around existing sites, which is what this does.
Okay. Cal?
Yeah, so just to be clear, are we differentiating between, with the sensitive site, supervised drinking as opposed to unregulated or regulated sale? Is that what we're talking about here? Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're proposing are both off and on license options for this one in our proposed draft. So they were the bottle stores, nightclubs and taverns were the three most popular responses when we asked people what they would like to.
Thank you. In your staff advice on the proposed amendments, the last bullet point with Councillor Moore's amendment says, if you agree to the amendment, it will impact proposed amendments 3 and 4 below. For the avoidance of doubt, can you please just clarify that correlation and how that affects those amendments, please?
Yes, certainly. So should council choose to apply this only to bottle stores, that means when we would be considering the further amendments, so Councillor Field's amendments around the 50-metre exclusion zone, that would be for only bottle stores, for instance, rather than all three. And the same for Councillor Harrison Hunt as well. So it would be only in relation to bottle stores, if that's what councillors chose.
Okay. Any more questions on that one, A2? Yeah.
Is there the potential to make it more subtle potentially? So, Mel's point around pubs open at lunchtime near schools, those kind of things that are within 200 metres. Are we able to, if we chose, do more nuanced with timing? So, for example, new ones open after 4, for example. I don't. I'm just. Is it possible rather than I'd like to?
I mean, it may be possible. I think what we've done when trying to come up with our policy is to keep things pretty sort of as simple as possible and not get too detailed around that sort of thing, just for sort of ease of implementation and understanding. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a license application has both a starting and end time, a license with starting and end time to it, and that would only apply to any new ones that would want to open up.
And Andre's concern and many people's concern about the potential for this to be interpreted eventually as a sinking lid type policy. So how do we see it operating in things where we can mitigate against people, against current bars and taverns being shut down, for example, if a license, if they're sold? Like, is there something we can include in there that would mitigate against that concern rather than doing the whole site thing? I don't know.
So what the community has told us for this policy is that essentially they don't want new venues within that area, within these sensitive sites. And so what we have done is to essentially say that it's, it's okay if you're already there, that's okay to operate, and it's okay to sell that that premises to someone else if you're already there. But what the community has said is that they don't want more, and so that's what we've based our policy on. So
but the concern is that if one sells, that the new person won't be granted a license, if you like, and therefore it will be one less rather than the same.
So if they sold it directly, that the LAP wouldn't or shouldn't get in the way of that new owner getting a license.
Okay.
They would still have to pass the other tests to get a license, like be a fit, a proper person, and those sort of tests. But it wouldn't be the LAP. It would still allow for that to happen.
That's the key concern at the moment, which is that idea of a sinking lid. So are there ways to make it more clear within the existing framework that that's the case? Or are we able to put something in there, or some wording that says a maximum of the same number within those sensitive site areas, or something like that? Which,
it's possible. There might be something we'd have to go back and consider, though.
Okay, thanks.
Right, Andre?
Again,
We're still on what I call your one.
it's just to assist that answer, just to make it clear, if a business doesn't have an immediate buyer or someone to take it over, and they have to close, which has happened over the last few years, it's nada, no more license. No one can take it over and put in a new license.
Yeah, which is why I want to find a way to stop
I get what
that
you're saying.
happening.
I just want
Maybe without changing the boundaries, but find a different way to achieve that same outcome, if you like. See if there's a different way.
Yeah, totally get what you're saying. It just that point wasn't covered in the answer.
Yeah.
Something I needed to make clear.
Yeah. So is there a way that we can then enable a physical building, like even if there's a gap of a year in between a business closing and another one opening up?
I mean, it's something we could consider. We'd have to probably go back and look at that and how it would sort of play out with how we've analysed the rest of the policies. As I say, what we've heard from the community is that they don't want more. So something else we could do that you've mentioned potentially would be to, for instance, set a maximum rather than any more. But that would be something we would probably have to think about.
Yeah, because being able to change locations within, for example, within a commercial area might be useful. Yeah.
Potentially.
Okay.
Dunno.
All right. So now we're finished with questions on that one. We'll move just down to A3, which is Tyrone and Mel's one, option C, because I want to give everyone the same amount of time to talk about them. Is there any questions between us all or of staff on that option on A3, please? Sam?
Just to clarify, this is just tailored to Banks Peninsula.
Oh, that's correct, Sam.
Yep. So same thing though, like to Mel's question, if it was around the schools and stuff like that, it's just within 50 metres.
Yeah. Because I mean the schools in Akaroa, Littleton,
So tight.
Devotionals, Diamond Harbour are all within 200 metres of the
Yeah,
of the commercial area.
definitely. Yeah, no, that's cool. Just clarifying. Yep.
So it's just it just for my benefit. So it's from 200 for everyone out there. It's from 200 down to 50 on those areas because you've got everyone's concentrated. Say Devotionals, for example, it's only a tiny wee village, and everything's within.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the kids from Devotionals aren't walking home past the Devotionals store, I would say. They're in a car.
Okay.
I wonder if staff want to just also, again, for other people that might be listening, clarify what you advise, because they won't have this in front of them.
Sure, yes. So the amendment that we're talking about here is potentially pertains to a concern around option C, the sensitive sites provision applying in Banks Peninsula towns and settlements. They are quite small compared to the rest of the district, and so the option here is to reduce the 200 metre rule that we're applying to everywhere outside of the central city, so outside of the 4 Avs, to change that for the Banks Peninsula down to 50 metres to sort of recognise those, the nature of those townships, and that is something that is an amendment that we could do now.
So that just so totally clear, this is just for new ones. The ones that are there aren't affected whatsoever.
That's right. Yeah,
Correct. Okay, just making sure everyone knows. Okay, enough. Kira? Yep.
I don't really want to get into debate, but I guess it's just that, like, you know, the commercial area of Diamond Harbour is so close to the school and it's got empty shops, and you're pretty much hamstringing it if you.
No, fair comment. No, that's right. So we'll now move on to A4, which is Tyler's one. What did you want to do something with it, mate?
Yeah, I may be pulling it. The last thing I want is a delay in the LAP to go out. But I just wanted to get some clarity around why it could potentially be delayed. And there are some really fair points in this, but there were points that I had questions about. And the first question I've got is the tools that we give to the DLCs at the moment are quite broad ranging. So, for example, if we've got things that they consider things like amenity and good order, the suitability of the applicant, the impact on the surrounding community, and the proximity to sensitive sites. Now, they could easily hit 2 out of the 4 of those, potentially 3 out of the 4 of those if they pick up their rubbish outside their liquor store. But the fourth one is is the one that the community have power with, particularly with the sensitive sites issue. So would you be able to tell me how this would help bolster the DLC to make decisions that the community will be able to try and have a bit of a, what's the word? The question is, how would the DLC have more power after we put this LAP in place to be able to advocate for the communities that actually don't want this in their community?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 things to that. The first is that what the LAP would do was make it a clear rule, so people know the rules. So without an LAP in place at the moment, I'd say it's probably more discretion that the DLC has when applying that final sort of sensitive site consideration. So that what this does is makes it very clear for everyone that there's a rule in place that within this sort of area, these types of places are unlikely to be able to open. What it also does is that it changes the onus from people having to object. So if for instance, a bottle store wanted to open up near a school, under the current system, essentially the community has to rally and apply get involved in the DLC process. What this does is it flips the onus around and essentially says that that situation wouldn't happen, and if it is to happen, it's actually on the licensed applicant to show that they can manage any concerns of the community.
That's great. So how does that work? So if they were going to do that, would that be a pre-application consultation that they're doing with the community?
So the DLC would have to show the DLC that they had engaged with the community and that they were trying to manage any potential concerns. What that is specifically, we've chosen not to be really prescriptive about what that is, because we think there are probably different circumstances where different things might be the most appropriate thing to apply. And so we've left it into the, to the judgment and the process of the DLC and the process to manage that. What we want the LAP to do is to set the policy direction, but not be too prescriptive about what has to be done.
Yeah, I'm really glad you've raised that, because I think that's the crux of it. Is the key concern that I've got at the moment is around that pre-application consultation with the community, etc., where the off license. I'm not worried about on licenses, to be honest with you. It's the off license bottle stores that can easily go to areas with sensitive sites and community sensitive sites and say, let me help the community out. It's not bribery because it's illegal, but it is what they call good faith or voluntary charity, where they could say, well, let's help you build something, or let me sponsor a sports team to be able to get support from this community. Would that be possible under this new LAP?
I mean, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something we haven't sought advice on really. But yeah, it's. I guess it's a hypothetical. That I mean, that'd be for the arrangement at the time of the DLC and the community and those parties that make that decision. I'd say.
Okay, so that I'm really I do apologise for this, but this is something that I've seen in the community for many years. And it's the opportunity for us to really hone down on this issue here, because for a Riccarton context, for example, they had, in my opinion, some stores had weak arguments in the way that they're contributing to the community. For example, they're picking up bottles from students who make a mess outside their store. And then there you go, tick the box. So I'm just trying to figure out these loopholes, and if staff have faith that the community will have the power to be able to have their say and have it counted, I'd be happy to put this aside. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I can speak on behalf of the District Licensing Committee.
Please.
They want the LAP. They want the power to be able to implement these sorts of things and put the power in the community's hands. So, we have to leave it to them, and have faith in them. But they want an LAP. They want to be able to place restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question then, and I'm probably on my way to pulling this. Is there anything stopping us from consulting on helping the LAP with the decisions around the components of applying for exemptions and around sensitive sites?
Sorry, to consult on how the DLC would. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. So, asking for the community's thoughts on what restrictions should be in place within the exemption process itself, not necessarily the other scopes of work, more around the exemption area.
We've already consulted the community on those options.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. In that case, reluctantly, I'd like to pull that, but also just have it noted that we'd love to keep an eye on the way that the DLC process these things and seeing if it's actually fit for purpose for future. That'd be
No
great.
problem. Okay, so now we'll go down. Oh, sorry, Andre, you had a question. Yep. You're happy? Yeah. Okay. So the last one that we've got in front of us is A5 from Pauline. Would you like to talk to a little bit of that, Pauline?
Yep. So I just feel that this would apply to a new proposal for especially a supermarket. It seems to me it's a little bit unfair if an off licence wanted to set up a business in an area and it was not allowed to because it was in a deprivation area or close to one or for whatever reason, but a supermarket could because it would get a licence because the clause in there reads it's not the primary purpose, so the alcohol sale is not the primary purpose, and I think it's a fair whack of their purpose. And I just think it's a little bit unfair. So I'm just proposing that we take that term out, and so then they would have to apply for a licence on their own merit. If we were to decline one, they can still go to the DLC. Is that right? Over and above that. So they probably would get one, but it just means that they don't get one carte blanche when someone else can't.
Yes. So what this would do is essentially would remove that exemption from the policy, which would mean that a new supermarket that wanted to open up in an area of high deprivation wouldn't be able to get an alcohol license, sort of by default under the rule. They could always go to the DLC. So this would further limit or restrict the alcohol available in those communities. The flip side of that is that it could also negatively impact investment decisions of supermarkets to move into areas of higher deprivation. They might be disincentivised to do that, knowing that they might not be able to get an alcohol licence.
Yeah, but I think that in all fairness, the likelihood that they would get one is high. The fact is they don't just automatically get one. They're on the same level playing field as anybody else then. Yep.
That would be the consequence of it.
Yeah. And I'd need a seconder.
Sam, question.
Thanks for this. I just wanted to clarify. So in the staff advice, it says, and it's interesting because the response just seems. I just want to clarify it. So removing this exemption would mean a new supermarket in an area of high deprivation would not be able to get an alcohol license. This would restrict further availability of alcohol in high deprivation areas. So does it mean they won't be able to get one, or they may not be able to get one?
Well, with the LAP, the DLC always have discretion, but what it would do is it would make the default position, that they wouldn't, in an area of high deprivation, that they wouldn't automatically be able to get one. So, yeah.
Not automatic. Yeah.
So just to be clear though, because I know, and we talked about this last time we were here, just around the DLC sort of sticking in their lane, so to speak. If the policy removes that exemption, is there a high likelihood that they would get one? I guess what I'm thinking is, if you think about the work that's happening at the moment around potentially breaking up supermarkets, what would a poorer area be disadvantaged because the supermarket would choose not to go into that area? As opposed to, I hate to say it, my area where we might get a third operator, which drops food prices.
That is a risk as well. I'm saying, yeah. We don't know how those applications will go. Obviously, I couldn't comment.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. Sarah.
Thanks. But if a new supermarket did go in and the exemption was there, they would still be captured by the maximum hours for selling alcohol.
Yeah, that's still would
so they
apply.
couldn't sell it after 9,
Correct.
kind of thing. Yeah. So excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Tim.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just kind of a wee bit confused about what's the principle here. Are we not wanting to provide having under any guise alcohol being provided in a deprivation area, or what are we trying to achieve? Because what is the definition of a primary purpose? So could a bottle store or a bottle chain open up a superette and then say we're actually a superette which also sells as a secondary alcohol? No, but the world's changing. We're trying to get more opportunity rather than the duopoly we have. So if you've got someone who's got a really good mind,
it's possible. That would be, again, at the discretion of the DLC to make that assessment at the time.
So a supermarket could open in a deprivation area and then go to the DLC to get a licence to sell alcohol. It's just a slightly different process rather than just getting carte blanche.
At the moment, they have to apply for building consent, resource consent, and then an alcohol licence. So they still have to apply.
Yeah.
But because that primary purpose clause is in there, they're more likely to get the licence.
No, aren't we? Because I know exactly what you're saying, but we're changing the LAP to be more prescriptive in high deprivation areas, which then has that flow-on effect of potentially restricting a supermarket going into that area, unless they chose not to operate and sell alcohol, I guess.
Unless they're 50 metres away from a school or a church, or but then that comes back to it.
Yeah. So you're right.
Yeah, righto. This is good. This is good discussion. Celeste.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam's kind of asked my questions, but I think just to recap, there could be a bit of a perverse kind of outcome where you have existing operators that are doing a really bad job. Somebody else might be looking at coming in and potentially won't be doing it. Got a good example in New Brighton where the operator is doing a terrible job, is actually fueling harm, and their lease is up. Another operator might go, too many hoops. So is that something that would be a potential outcome of this?
So the policy does favour those that already exist.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mel?
I've got a more general question about all amendments. A general question about all the amendments. So the question is there a risk, because we've gone through this engagement process and got feedback and you've created that draft and now we're making potential changes, are there any risks of a judicial review here with the changes that we're making?
There's always risk of judicial review, but as long as we can show that we've gone out to the public, going through a process that's fair and reasonable.
So is putting up amendments that are against a majority of views in an engagement process a fair process based on your view?
I would say, council. It's up to council to choose what the policy is, and that is your prerogative. I would say it's more around the types of things that we haven't yet considered or that we don't yet know the community's views on, and putting that forward would likely be a high risk.
Yeah. The risk will be if we choose something that's out of scope, which we haven't considered previously.
All right. Pauline?
So just to clarify, could I just clarify, Mel's, if every single amendment went through, there's no risk?
From what you see at the moment.
Is that what you're saying? But all the changes went through, is there any risk? Do you want to take time to consider that, or you're confident that there's not?
Yeah, I think.
Or are any more risky than others? Maybe I don't know.
The amendments that we're considering today are all within what we have, what we've asked the community about, and what we have analysed. So I'd say there would be a lower risk of that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep, thank you. Mine is around the primary purpose again. If a supermarket, you right?
Sorry, apologies.
That's right. If a new supermarket wanted to arrive somewhere in a perhaps near or in a low deprivation area and sell alcohol off licence, would they have to also engage with the community, like you're talking about with the sensitive sites and stuff like that, or?
That's not part of the way the exemption is described.
Okay.
Okay. Marcus?
I was just going to check. Pauline, do you need a seconder for that one? Yep, happy to.
Okay.
Yeah. Through the chair, just having had a further look at it, there may be a problem with number one because you're not going to go ahead with that.
It's withdrawn. Yep.
Right.
There's a different resolution that I've put forward based on just providing the extra information.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
But
so
the original one, there would have been problems
that's good. We've tidied that one up. Tim?
So a supermarket could open, say, in a deprivation area or close to a sensitive area without say, a bottle store part of it, but then it could apply later on once it's established itself in that community for a liquor licence to then open up a liquor area in that supermarket. Is that right?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and Vic?
With respect to A5, I'm mindful of a contentious new supermarket that is about to be opening or proposed in the St Albans area with some pretty firmly held views by some elected members. Can you tell me whether that the Madras Street proposal fits within the high deprivation area, please?
No, it's not within the high deprivation area.
Okay, so that's good. What we have here now, yes. Number one is now, we'll get down to debate on this, but number one has the wording on our paper has now changed to what you see in front of you. Okay? Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Is that right, Mary? That's good.
Yep.
Number two is more or less as it stands. Okay. Number three, now I've got a question on number three. Have we changed that around enough? Yes, that it doesn't, because I've got would require a delay. We fixed that by this new wording, have we? See on the paper that we've all got, you might not have.
Yes.
A3, it says proposal is written, amendment would require a delay. Now, have we changed that wording enough that it doesn't require a delay? You see where I'm coming from?
Yes. Sorry. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay,
So what we're proposing can be done. Yeah.
Yes, so that's good. So there's 3, 4. Thank you, Tyler. So that's missing. So we now got 5. And that means it could proceed now if we did that. Okay, so we're all good. So we now got 4 instead of 5. Is there any new ones? Right. So now we can go to debate for all the amendments and the sorry, Andre?
A question more generally, not specific to amendments. Now's the time to ask.
If you want to, yeah.
I believe Selwyn, I tried Googling it. Do you know if Waimakariri are doing an LAP?
Waimaka already has an LAP.
Has an LAP.
They both do, yeah.
So did they change it since the government changed the law?
Oh, I'd have to check.
Okay,
Yeah, I think Selwyn are reviewing theirs at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But what? Yeah, but Waimak to knowledge aren't reviewing. They're sticking with one they've.
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, thank you.
Oh, that's cool. Good questions. So now we can, all the amendments and the substantive, we can debate it. And it's one debate for the whole lot. So if anyone would like to start off, that would be good. Righto, Tim, then Pauline.
Yeah, look, thank you, and thank you, staff, for the work that you've done on this. It is a really hot topic, and it is overdue. I'm very fortunate in my area that we have a number of supermarkets, which has been one of the conversations today, which are very well run. We also have a liquor ban area, which is also well enforced. So the only concerns I've ever had from my community are about bottle stores, but I think there has to be an even playing field, and I think this is getting close to it. I would personally like a meeting with the DLC, a briefing with them, because I think there are some issues there that I'd like to clarify. But overall, I'm very happy with this, and thank you very much for the work you've done.
Pauline, please.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
I did. Just don't get me to repeat it.
Yeah, I support what Tim has just said too. Thanks to the staff for all the work on this. It's good to be able to put this out for consultation and hear what people think. The pre-engagement was a really helpful process. I think we're following a good process here, and we are focusing on off licences. My amendment with the not for primary purpose, from removing that from the exemption, is really just, I'm not trying to stop supermarkets opening, and I'm not trying to stop supermarkets selling alcohol. It's just to create a level playing field. I think it's just really unfair that a big box, retail outlet can just come in and land and do the same business as someone who wanted to just sell alcohol cannot. So that, and as you say, that supermarket in my area is not in a high deprivation area, so that is not the intention that I'm pushing here today. It's just to create a level playing field, and I think it's really important that we be fair here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. First, thanks to the staff. Council staff have done an incredible job to turn this around so quickly. I'm glad that we've been able to seize the opportunity to make a difference. I think an LAP makes clear rules for everybody, and I love the fact that the burden is shifting onto the retailers. I feel like this is going to give community back control and potentially addresses the imbalance of power and turns the balance back in favour of communities, flipping the onus on the retailer to satisfy the DLC that they have addressed community concerns. I've represented sections of my community at the DLC process, and despite significant objection from the community, the retailer satisfied the legal conditions, and it really was a fait accompli. Quite frustrating. The community's views and opinions seem to have little practical effect on the decision to grant the licence. So I guess with this going out to consultation and hopefully being ratified, I would hesitantly put my trust in the DLCs to do the job that the community has always asked them to do. Cheers.
Thank you. Tyler?
Kia ora koutou. I just want to thank staff for the work that you've done. When I first got elected into council, there was ramblings of the LAP being implemented, and I was just frothing at the bit to see it come to fruition. So now it's here, 2.5 years later. I'm absolutely chuffed to see it come forward. I tell you who I really have faith in, and that's the DLC. I have faith in our staff. I have faith in our elected members around the table, but I don't have faith in grubby little liquor store owners who own small shops in the middle of dairies outside schools. So I'm hoping that this LAP bolsters the protections for our community. There are good operators out there too, though. There are good liquor store owners out there, but the ones that I'm talking about, they know who they are because they're guilty of it. So that's all I wanted to say in this debate. Just to call out those and just letting them know that I'm hoping that council has a keen watch on them, a good eye on them, because I'm someone who's been around alcohol harm, particularly around young children and people, and I don't want to see that for our future. Kia ora.
Thank you. Mark, please.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. You've done a great job in getting this to us for the consultation. It's long overdue. Was good to see the central government, change the rules a wee bit to allow this to be brought back onto the table and have more opportunity to progress through into getting better protections for our community. As I guess one of the more active councillors around the table in the way of protecting my community through objecting to applications for licences, I'm really thrilled to see this coming before us and going out to community for consultation. I think it's long overdue, and thank you for what you've done in getting it there. And here's hoping we can get it out to the community for them to be consulted and then bring it back and hopefully get it over the line and get the protection in place that our communities need. Now, regards to my seconding of Pauline's amendment, I see a few eyebrows being raised on that one, but to me, if your supermarket is based on the financial basis that selling alcohol is going to decide whether you open a supermarket or not, then you're not a strong operator, and you should be able to operate without alcohol sales in your premises of a supermarket. Some of the, I guess, largest harms that come into communities like mine, which is highly deprived, that is through the sales of low price alcohol through those operators. So we need to have the protection in place that they don't have a primary use exclusion to be able to get that licence as they open their door. We need it to be tested through the DLC process as to whether that is going to be a good thing into a community, rather than just giving it an as of right. As you open your door, you can basically have your alcohol licence. So having that protection in place, I think, is a very strong option that we need for our communities to try and limit every way we can the harm that off-licence sales through those sorts of premises of supermarkets can cause and does cause. So that's why I wanted to be seconding on that, and happy to support that, and hopefully the rest of my colleagues can understand where that's coming from. We've got to try and limit the opportunity for harm into our communities every way we can, and supermarkets unfortunately can cause far too much of it too easily. So please support that amendment, and let's look at getting this out and hopefully get the right solution to give our communities the protection they need.
Thank you, Sarah.
Kia ora, and I'd like to start by reiterating the thanks to staff for the enormous amount of mahi on this. It's been really thorough. It's keeping the process as clean as possible to stop potential legal challenges in the future, which is excellent, and it's been excellent engagement with the community so far. Just to remind colleagues that this isn't the be-all and end-all, this is for the draft, and there are things that I like and don't like about some of the amendments. I completely get Councillor Moore's point about that potential sinking lid. I don't think the amendment itself is the right way to do it, and what I'd quite like to see is the community feedback on the current draft and working through that and finding a way to mitigate against the concerns for the final proposal. So I won't be voting in favour of that one today. Most people in the early engagement were against new pubs and bars and things opening up within 200 metres of a school. And I think we can find another way to enable replacements and those kind of things as part of the process going forward. When it comes to the not primary purpose, I'm going to vote against the amendment today. I think there is that really difficult tension between enabling more supermarkets and more competition and limiting the availability of alcohol. I do note that the 9 p.m. maximum will still apply, and that actually supermarkets aren't the primary supplier of the premix and RTDs, those really low-cost drinks. Supermarkets don't do that because they're not allowed to do spirits, which means they don't do the really low-cost RTDs and things. They have beers and wines, and they are higher priced than the bottle stores do. So I think that that's mitigated against there. I'm really looking forward to getting the community feedback on this. Our communities have been asking this for a really long time. I remember being gutted that we finished the last process when we did, and really pleased that the law changes enabled this to come back and proceed in a much clearer and less risky way. Thanks.
Tyrone.
Kia ora. I too would like to thank staff for this. It's not easy. There's lots of things to consider and to try and get a just and equitable outcome for the whole city, and that's all of the city, including the rural parts of it. And so great work there. But I believe that we really do need to do this. We need to. I mean, it's healthy in a constructive and civil society to reflect on things that do cause harm, and I think it's important to be able to do this in this forum. So it's really great that it's going out for consultation. I just will speak very quickly to the amendment that I've put up. So I just need to reiterate that this is to avoid unintended consequences. So the communities in Banks Peninsula are necessarily very compact because of the geography that they're in, and the early settlers in all their wisdom put the schools quite close to the commercial areas, in Littleton in particular, and they even put it next to a prison. So that's what they were thinking back in the day. The prisons thankfully disappeared, but the school remains very, very close to the commercial area. So as the initial proposal stood, I mean, 200 metres, pretty much every school in Banks Peninsula is within 200 metres of the commercial area. So I think reducing that distance from sensitive sites is kind of reasonable and pragmatic and sensible for the communities in Banks Peninsula. But noting Councillor Templeton's observation that this is not the end, this is an opportunity to get out and ask the community and to see what they think of that, and hopefully they'll take a pragmatic view as well. No, that'll do. Yep, thank you.
Melanie.
Thanks. I think initially ideally, actually, I would like to see the draft go out as a result of the community engagement that we've had today. I personally didn't really want any changes, which was why I put through that first amendment, because I think that we should make it clear any changes councillors are making today to the public when we go out for consultation. So I'm happy with that new amendment. I don't support Andre's and Sam's amendment. I do understand what you're trying to achieve, and bottle stores are definitely the big problem. However, one, we've already had engagement on this, and 75% don't want to see pubs, taverns and nightclubs near schools in future. So I think we should support those people that have been involved in the engagement up to date. And I'm also thinking of places in my part of the city, like Addington and Hillmorton here, where you have people that might go to a pub or bottle stores, all those things. They might be walking down the street, go to the park. And they can come across kids that are coming home from school, those sorts of things. I just would rather we go out with what we had initially put in the draft. I will happy to support Tyrone's. Initially, I didn't like that one much either, but it does make sense in Banks Peninsula to a degree. So it'd be good to see what the feedback is on there. And with Pauline's one, I agree with the comments around levelling the playing field. I know the supermarkets are not going to like this if this is to pass, although I suspect it probably won't. But I think the aim of it is to address alcohol harm, which is the whole point of local alcohol policy that we're putting forward. So that's what I'm keeping in mind.
Celeste?
Just repeating what everyone else has said, thanks so much to staff for their work on this and patiently explaining all the different aspects of it. I think it's been a really good process. Overall, I agree with the direction and the amendments. The one that I am quite concerned about is the one around supermarkets. It's probably the first time I've heard that less competition in supermarkets is a good idea. Living in an area that would be impacted by this, I can say that the current operators aren't up to scratch. So by putting forward something that would be a disincentive to an investment decision for another supermarket to come in would actually be a negative impact on that community. And I'm sure many others would feel the same. We also know, based upon feedback from the community and from staff, is that supermarkets provide a broader kind of amenity. So just focusing on alcohol harm, you're looking at it too narrowly. So that's why supermarkets were excluded from that. I would say that what we can see in some of these areas is actually the supermarkets don't do a good job, and if other supermarkets were to come into the area, they might have to lift their game. We also see that the pricing isn't particularly competitive in some of those areas. So there's an array of issues that come about by trying to solve one problem. You're actually fueling other problems. I would also add that the current approach actually does give us discretion to look at those operators. So I just don't see where the value is being added here. So I will definitely not be supporting this one today. Thank you.
Sam?
Thank you. I will support the LAP in principle along with Andre's amendment. I think, sort of my views from a policy point of view, it makes it a lot more consistent and clear, particularly when you're dealing with something like the DLC. And sometimes, and I think I've said it before, they do, in my view, jump outside their lane. Whereas I think this gives real good clarity and certainty to people. It sort of, in my mind, also reflects sort of existing use rights, and I think that's something we should kind of bear in mind. I won't be supporting Pauline's supermarket one. I completely get the intent of it, but I just, in my mind, when the central government have sort of signalled they're looking at what they do with supermarkets, I can't see how disincentivising additional supermarkets or competition to go into higher deprivation areas is going to lead to better outcomes for that community when there is already alcohol being sold in that community. It would be different if there wasn't, but the reality is there is already alcohol sold through these premises. All we would be doing is preventing more supermarkets, potentially of different brands, moving in to help hopefully drive down prices. So I think it would probably have the unintended consequences of affecting the lower deprivation areas of the city. and potentially that's counterintuitive. I know exactly the intent, but I just, in my mind, can't see how that would play out, so wouldn't necessarily support that, but we'll obviously welcome the feedback that comes for the next wee while and go from there. But it is good that we can finally just have something done and we can move on as a council, and I think actually just everyone's dealt with this in a really constructive way, and would also just thank the team for the work on this. Like I said last time, I think this is far less radical than I thought you were going to do, and I think the fact that you've been able to land on this from the pre-engagement suggests why we're able to have a constructive conversation today, so thank you for that.
Andre?
Thank you. I'll just speak to my amendment. So, my concern certainly is that it would put a sinking lid on hospitality venues in certain zones. And just to be clear, one of those sensitive zones is within the 4Avs, and it's a zone that includes a number of nighttime establishments along St. Asaph Street, including live music venues. And of course, if one was to close down, someone tried to open up later, they wouldn't be allowed. There are other parts of Christchurch where that will be an issue, such as Littleton, where there's parts still to be developed, and there'll be other parts as well, which would have to come back and fix up later. It would also risk potentially looking silly because you could still open up a restaurant or cafe. And there are such things as late night restaurants. For example, I remember back in the days when Winniebago's restaurant by day and evening, late night, it would operate as a music venue. So you end up with a disjointed policy and people being a restaurant and still opening up late anyway. So what were you trying to fix? That is not exactly clear. And if someone's wanting to open up a pub or whatever in an inappropriate location, the DLC already has powers to deal with that. The community can object. I'm just not aware of that really happening because it appears as though there aren't really issues with those types of venues opening up. If we end up with a great big proliferation of pubs and nightclubs in the city, first off, I'll be very, very surprised the way the global economy is going. But if we end up with this great big proliferation of that, then maybe we come back and revisit this policy. I'm just really struggling to see that happening in the near future. If we want to reduce harm, then we shouldn't be advancing a policy that risks getting people out of controlled unlicensed premises and into bottle stores, which are open all day, and we know that off-licence is where the real harm is caused. That's ultimately what the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act in 2012 did. It got a lot of people out of hospitality businesses when they tightened up on a lot of those things. And sure enough, what it's resulted in, many hospitality businesses have gone out of business and bottle stores are flourishing and popping up everywhere. That's what happened following that legislation. So we shouldn't be putting forward any policy that risks potentially closing down on licenses and moving people to off licenses. We are here wanting to reduce harm as I understand it. Just one of the unintended consequences of the policy as a whole that I am still concerned about is a lot of supermarkets now don't open past 9 or 10 p.m. If you bring in a 9 p.m. rule, a lot that open till 10, some will say bugger it, will just close at 9 instead. I'm told that's happened in some cases in Auckland. I need to check that, but that's what I'm told. And likewise, if Waimakariri have already introduced their LAP, there's bottle stores open in Kaipoi and Rangiora until 10 p.m. So we could close off ours at 9 p.m, but actually someone will still be able to then drive over 20, 30 minutes away and buy alcohol between 9 and 10 anyway. They won't be able to Uber Eats it from their local, but they will be able to drive 20 minutes, half an hour. So that's unintended consequence there. The people can still access alcohol within a few minutes until 10 anyway. So, another concern.
Thank you. Another exciting day. This is a really momentous, I hate to use that word, this is a really impactful and really valuable and hugely beneficial thing that we're going to be doing for the community, and we should acknowledge that at every step of the journey. I'm agnostic on whether I support Councillor Moore and McDonald's amendment because I'm on one hand, I want to make sure that as we go down this path, we're holding hands and singing Kumbaya for as long as we can. But on the other hand, I'm not actually going to physically touch your hand, Andre, but on the other hand, I'm also heartened by the responses we had from officers that gave me good comfort that we can protect our optionality as we go through the process, which is really important, and actually Mary's advice as well about actually detailing the journey and the things that we've already talked about and engaged with in the pre-engagement. So I feel pretty confident and comfortable that we're heading into a good decision and a robust and a very defendable decision. On the supermarket issue, I have to, I guess, disagree with that amendment. I mean, it would be great if we lived in a world where supermarkets didn't care whether they sold booze or not. But while it isn't their primary purpose, and I think that should be recognised, it is important to them. And as Foodstuffs and Woolworths, and hopefully there'll be a third operator at some stage, come into the market as they're making those investment decisions, I would hate to have that extra barrier of, oh, we have the uncertainty of not knowing whether we can have an important part of our business get approved or not. So I wouldn't want to see that happen. So all that being said, good day, good work, and can't wait to hear what the public have to say.
The tiny bit that I'm going to say is staff done a hell of a lot of work on this, and they went and talked to stakeholders, and they came back with an extremely pragmatic result. It was, and apart from the fact that we're going to play around with a couple of little amendments, we haven't gone daft and gone over the top. I think this is great. Get it out for consultation, and see what happens. So I think it's, as you said, Jake, it's a great, get it done. So I will now do the amendments individually. Okay. So we've got the first one up there, which is the one by Melanie and Tyrone. Is that right? Everyone can see that highlighted? Oh, sorry, I missed something.
Yeah, Mel and Sarah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. So here we have that one that's there. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you, that is carried. The next one, which is A2. Okay, you see that one right there. That's from Andre and Sam. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
Show of hands. Or division.
It's carried, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So for Amendment A2, Councillor Templeton. No. Councillor McLennan.
Yes.
Councillor McDonald.
Yes.
Councillor Johansson.
It's not here.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Fields.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Donovan. Yes. Councillor Coker.
No.
Councillor Peters.
No.
The Mayor.
Yes.
Councillor Scundrett.
Yes.
Councillor Barber.
Yes.
Councillor Henstock.
Yes.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cotter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 4 and 3 again.
Okay, thank you, that is carried. Okay, so we'll move to the next one right there. And that's by Tyrone and Melanie. Is that right? Yes, is that right? Tyrone and Melanie? Yeah. Okay, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Brilliant, thank you very much. And then we'll move down to A5, the primary purpose one. All of those in favour? Aye. Against? No. That is lost. Do you want division? If you want division, that's fine.
He's called for one. Called for one.
You're going to do it?
He's called for one.
Oh, cool. Oh, you call for it, you do it. Okay. So,
It's good we didn't need it.
now do the substantive.
Mm.
And I don't need any of that.
for division for A5, Councillor Moore.
No.
Deputy Mayor Cotter. Councillor McClellan. Councillor Barber.
No.
Councillor McDonald.
No.
Councillor Fields.
No.
The Mayor.
No.
Councillor Scundrett.
Aye.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
No.
Councillor Coker.
Yes.
Councillor Templeton. No. Councillor Donovan. No. Councillor Peters. Yes. And Councillor Henstock.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4 again. 4 yes and the remaining against.
Okay, so that is lost. Thank you very much. So now we'll vote on the substantive because it's already got a mover and seconder. So I'll put the substantive. All of those in favour? Aye. Against? That is brilliant. Thank you very much. So now I will move and Pauline will second to come out of standing orders.
Reinstate.
Reinstate. Oh, come out of. PX reinstate. Yeah, it actually has got reinstate. So all of those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you. That's carried. Now, that's very good work, everyone. So I think if we come back at 20 past 11, please, or just before, because we need a bit of a rest. Thank you.